how to cope with outdoor sketching and painting, aka on plein air. Now, coping with outdoor fears, of course, is simple. It really is all about having knowledge and having a direction. It doesn't really matter whether you think that your art is good enough or not when you are outdoors. The simple fact is that any onlooker that comes and watches you create and paint actually will think that you are a brilliant artist. That's rule number one. And I would love for you to get that into your mindset and begin knowing and believing that, because that will totally and utterly alleviate most of the insecurities that are within you and you thinking of what type of an artist you are. Now, the one thing that I would say that, my number one point with any art process, particularly when you begin anything, when you are outdoors, begin by making a bold statement. This will now let go and relax you to begin with, and now you don't have to worry about what mark you make as someone's watching you. Remember, they don't know what's in your head, so a big bold statement is really, really important. So in this video, what I wanted to talk to you guys about is shapes and line work, particularly when you are outdoors painting, or in this case, sketching. Now, of course, if you've just realized, I'm not in the public park, as I mentioned to everybody that I will be. In Australia right now, it is incredibly hot. And I went out this morning and the haze is just too thick, and it's not allowing me to be able to give you guys the information that I want. Plus, from a safety perspective, I just wanted to make sure that I look after myself and not get dehydrated while I'm outside. So that's the reason why I'm in here, and I did not want to miss out on giving you guys this information. So I'm fully determined and focused, and therefore I'm coming live to you from the studio. If, of course, we have never met before, my name is Mirjana Persakis, full-time oil painter, love painting people amongst other subject matter, and my other passion, of course, is giving you guys this information. I absolutely am determined to share with you as much of my knowledge that I have gathered over the last 15 years and be able to inspire, even if it's just one person out in the world, to begin their creative process, bring out their inner out guru and share that talent with the rest of the world. If any of this information, of course, resonates with you, please click a like or a heart or one of those wow faces. I'd love to connect with you guys. And if you know somebody that could benefit from this information and would love to know more about art, by all means, comment down below with their name, and I'm certain that they will be inspired, even if it's a small spark within them, just to begin to look at their environment differently and perhaps begin doing small sketches. At the same time, I'm always really curious to know where this video is actually being watched, and I'd love to know where you guys are from and how far this video is reaching into the world, what corners of the world this is going to. So by all means, please comment down below where you're from. I'd love to know where you guys are from. I'm quite intrigued by that. I find that incredibly interesting. So yeah, let me know where you're from. We'd love to see that. Now, 5 simple ways of getting through the fears of outdoor painting or sketching, and what is it that you could do in order to make that process a lot easier for yourself. Now, number 1 is, of course, having simple tools. The more you complicate the things that you need to take out with you, it just doesn't allow you the space to think and to focus on the subject that you're painting. So simplify your tools. In this case, I will advocate for an outdoor sketch to have a viewfinder, and I will explain how that works. Quite simple. I've got variety of sizes. This is just one small one, and I've showed you them before. This is another size right here. There's another one here with dynamic points, which I've discussed before and how you can use that. But a viewfinder is really efficient. Again, I will go into detail what that is. I go with 2 sets of pencils. One is a 2B, the other one is a charcoal, which is the equivalent of about a 7B, perhaps even a 9B. Again, you could choose just one and get a crayon. It really does not matter. And a piece of paper or a sketchbook. 3 simple materials. So having a simplified process when you're out, really, really important. Number 2 point in terms of when you are outdoors, and this is where you want to start now to incorporate building your knowledge. Seeing light in the morning and seeing shapes is far better achieved in the early hours of the day, in the morning or late afternoon. The reason for this, of course, is that tones tend to be a lot sharper and you can distinguish between the tonality of your subject. Of course, you can also see, as a result of that definition, you can see shapes a lot better. If you're going out in the middle of the day, what will happen is, because number one, the sunlight is top down, so you've got all the shadows going down, there is no definition in terms of telling you the different tones, which gives you the ability to see depth, and you will struggle seeing shapes. So it's okay to go out in the middle of the day, but just keep in mind that you will have that challenge in front of you. And so if you're frustrated, it's probably got to do more with that. So give yourself the best foot forward and go out early in the morning. Again, I don't know where you guys are from. In Australia at the moment, it's daylight savings. And so for me, 5:30, 6 a.m. is, brilliant, because you can see a lot of different tones, a lot of crisp color, and a lot of different shapes and lines. And that's just, information that I love taking with me. So knowing when to go out is really important. Now, number 3 is location. Location. And I'll include the sub points under that. Number 1 of that sub point within the location is you must make sure, again, pending where you're at, that you keep warm or you keep cool. Again, really important, because you don't want to be thinking about I'm freezing or I'm too hot, and therefore you're not actually concentrating on the subject that you're creating. So having those elements balanced for yourself is quite critical. Equipment, which I just touched on as the number 1 point, keeping it simple. The more things you take with you, the more you got to keep on top of, and the more you got to balance. By keeping it simple, so have a plan from home of what you want to achieve, then just take those tools with you. That will also alleviate that anxiety of perhaps thinking that people are going to think, I don't know what I'm doing. So simplicity is best, right? Remember that. Spot. Now, the spot that you're in, the place that you create for yourself of what you want to paint, that you're looking at, is my number 1 within this position subcategory. Being inspired by your location, the spot that you're in, and painting is incredibly important. I mean, inspiration for me is energy that moves through you, almost extends through your arm, and then it transforms into a piece of artwork. So if you're not inspired by what you're creating, then again, you're just behind that 8 ball a little bit further. And so you find yourself having that frustration and you're almost forcing yourself to create something. So if you love something that you've seen out in the park, a tree, a bridge, a particular shape, then just create that. That's really important. Inspiration for me, without inspiration, actually, I wouldn't create many things. So that's the key that allows you to not have so many fears. Now, comfort, of course, is again another important part. It's almost similar to the point that I made about being warm or cold. Comfort also, I wanted to put in there to say, if you like to sit down and draw, then make sure that you have one of those triangular, or whatever they're called, stools, a seat or a chair that you can then sit down in. And again, you don't want to be thinking about that you're uncomfortable or your back's aching. Rather, you just want to concentrate and draw the subject that's in front of you. Now, observation within this position subcategory, which is, remember, number 3, position. Observation is key. when you start to look at your subject, you could be there and start to observe for maybe 5-10 minutes. Now, where fear kicks in for a lot of people, if an onlooker comes by and starts to look at you and you've done nothing for 5 minutes, you straight away have this, anxiety that I have to create something because they're going to think that I'm awful and bad. And so, if that's the case, again, feel free to communicate, because what you're doing is you're building up the information for yourself before it translates onto the white piece of paper. So observation is key. Now that brings me to point number 4, which is of course analyzing. So good segue from observation. We now want to analyze what we've just looked at. And so the analysis comes down to shapes, line work, again keeping it simple, and tonal values. Tonal referring to dark, light. Is it too dark over there? Is it light over here? 3 things again. So from observation, point number 4 is analysis. If you're looking at analysis, all you have to be thinking about, and again, it's keeping it simple, is looking at the different shapes within your subject matter. And I'll show you briefly. I do have a landscape here that I'm going to use and show you how it works with the Viewfinder. But analysis really now takes you to keeping these shapes really, really, really simple in order to create almost really a map or a puzzle for our brain when we get back into the studio to be able to paint. These are incredibly important steps. The 5th way in order to make sure that you are able to efficiently and with ease and less fear paint outdoors is, of course, character and knowing the character of your shape or the subject matter that you're looking at. You have to look at, number 1 is how many horizontal and vertical lines there are. This is really, really important, because sometimes you will start to see that if you've made too many horizontal lines, and I have discussed this before in other videos, then you want to break that up with vertical line work. Again, keeping your subject and composition interesting. You also want to look at, as you're making the shapes, the tonal values. The shape that's closest to you, is that darkest? What about the shape that's furthest from you? Is that lighter or darker than the one that you've made at the front? You also want to now make sure, and too many people make landscapes in particular, or even still lives that are symmetrical. So you want to avoid being symmetrical, having perfect symmetry within your artwork. Remember, you're creating a piece of artwork. This is not a draft plan in building a house. And so symmetry, whilst it works great with some compositions, with outdoor sketches, I found that you want to keep it loose and free and avoid making everything perfect. And so I treat that outdoor sketching process almost like a design, when you design a household or design aspect, meaning you layer and layer and layer each shape on top of one another to create different formats versus put them all in line and have a symmetrical landscape. So again, consider not having a perfect symmetry when you're outdoors, because it isn't about getting perfection, rather it's about getting the feel of what you're looking at. The other aspect within this character, which is point number 5, is looking at line work. And line work, again, I can't emphasize enough how important that is. And I do talk about line work a lot in a variety of all my other videos, that line work really divides spaces, and it tells us about distance, middle ground, and foreground. It also reduces, or enhances our attention, because if you want someone to move through a landscape, then you'll do a thick line work. If you want to have a soft, fuzzy feel, you want to do line work that is more soft and subtle. And one tip that I'll say to everybody about line work, that if you want to accentuate, and I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this, I'm sure some of the more advanced artists would be, but if you want to accentuate a curve within your composition, the best way to do that is by placing it next to a straight line. So line work, curves and shapes have an incredibly important aspect to play when we create our map, our sketch map, before we get to the painting process. So there they are, the 5 simple ways in which you can alleviate and create a far more easier painting process when you are outdoor. So remember, your focus when you are outdoors should be on line, shapes, and values, and intention. Okay, intention is really important. You need to understand what you want to achieve, what direction you want to go towards, and that intention is going to, again, drive you in how you want to create your work. Now, before I finish this video, I want to show you how the Viewfinder works and how is it that you can apply that when you are outdoors. Now, I'm going to turn that way. There we go. So I've chosen a fairly simple photograph here, and it is one that I've painted before, but I'll show you how this works. And by the way, it is super hot right now. In terms of seeing a viewfinder. Now I've got many viewfinders, and I showed you guys the different shapes. This is quite a small one. If I focus the viewfinder quite close, you can see that I'm only focusing on one particular aspect of my landscape. So let's pretend that this is out into nature and this is what I'm looking at. Now if I was only, and I'm having a challenge seeing that myself, but I'll do my best, but if I was only focusing on that, in terms of creating, and I'm going to create my box, a small box of what I'm looking here, I would literally create and draw that particular view on. Here's the straight line, there's another shape there, and I've got another shape up here. Now in terms of tonality, this particular shape is fairly dark, so there's my value plan there. This is a lot lighter, so I'm going to keep that fairly simple, and of course this is a lot lighter. So this is as simple as what it gets to create a value plan. If I want to now focus on a bit more bigger viewpoint of that landscape, I'm simply going to move my viewfinder, oh, there we go, a lot further out, and now I get the entire landscape that I'm looking at. And the benefit of doing this when you are out in the landscape or in nature is that our eyes, for example, we are able to see 180 degrees all around us. Maybe we're not owls, we can't see 270, and so you're distracted far too easily. By using a viewfinder, you're now segmenting, and you're just having an intention, directional focus at that subject that you're looking at. So creating different viewfinders, with some of which I've talked before, I don't know if you can see that. This particular one, has got, I've spoken about this before, dynamic points, and you can see them there. Now these dynamic points, which are part of the phi ratio, PHI, they will allow you to be able to find interest in your landscape. Now if you're not familiar with dynamic points, the other viewfinder which I use is known as there's a golden mean, which of course is, everyone's seen the snail shape, and that snail shape looks something like that, and it concentrates right into that middle point. So if I'm out again in a particular landscape and I want to create something different, I tend to utilize different viewfinders that are going to give me a particular focus or direction or an intention that I've already set out to create. So consider creating for yourself various viewfinders. And just a tip, I haven't actually colored this as yet. This is just, cardboard. I would suggest that you guys color it or paint it in a gray tone, because when you are outdoors in sunlight, this particular white's going to act like this huge reflector, and it will annoy you immensely. So I'm yet to do that for myself. I've gone through a couple of viewfinders, these are fairly new, but color them in a gray tone, and that means when you're out, you'll be able just to focus through that just like a window and not be distracted by what's going on here. So again, coming back to looking at our values and our tonal shapes, I'm going to create another small, think of it as a sketch plan, and again focusing on this particular landscape, it's really just using line, shapes and tone. So remember, I've started off with 2 pencils, one 2B, one a 9B, and in this particular instance it is simply me outlining what's going to work. So there's my 2 lines, there's my foreground up here, horizontal line this way. There's a shape that actually goes further up from that distant point right there, distant horizontal line. Then we've got this particular shape here that sits that way, and we've got smaller shapes, which is my rectangle here, that I'm going to incorporate right there. So that's actually a bit bigger. Okay, and we've got that particular shape that's moving straight up, so straight cylinder, and I've got now these different, almost like curved rectangles, and that's as simple as it gets. Outdoor sketching does not have to be difficult. It is really all you need to do is focus on shapes, line and tone. Once I have that value plan, then the focus turns to how dark is the shape that's here in comparison to the one at the back, in comparison to the foreground, in comparison to all the different shapes. And the more I look at that particular landscape, the more I can see that there's lines and different shapes there. There's even a rectangle within that big rectangle there. And so I can, you continue to break down every single process. Now I want to focus on tones, and the tonality is simply saying, well, this particular shape up here is far more darker. This is actually not as dark in the foreground, so I'm going to keep that fairly light. There's a shadow that's coming from the different part of the tree, and there's one part here that's fairly dark, and of course there are the darker sections of the tree that I'm going to include. So that's a simple value plan. Any questions that you guys have, please welcome them through. Again, I've always said to you, my words I'm offering to you with love and incredible energy. Unfortunately, they don't teach. They can guide you. What you will learn most of all is when you go out and begin this process yourself. I can't encourage you enough to do that. It is terrifying, I know, and you will probably feel a little bit fearful, but the moment you have that first step, you will then just see how easy and incredibly joyful it is to actually go out and create. So remember that when you are outdoors, the onlookers that come to you will already think and have in their mindset that you are a brilliant artist. So don't let that distraction make you feel uneasy. Be prepared by knowing that you can best see light, shapes and tones early in the morning or late in the afternoon, and take simple equipment with you. This is incredibly important. Otherwise you will overcomplicate and you will be stressful and have too much anxiety and fear in looking or feeling or thinking that you are looking a little bit like silly looking for your equipment. So keep it simple. If you have any questions, by all means, please send them through. I'll be more than happy to help you with any of your art processes, art challenges, your art journey. I know there is an art guru inside of every single person out there. I believe that every single person is a creative individual, and creativity is going to definitely guide you through various challenges. So I definitely encourage you to begin your creative journey. In a nutshell, I want to thank you all for support for this year, and particularly for supporting me with all the live Facebook feeds that I've been doing. I wish you all an incredible Christmas and a holiday season. Much love from me. I implore you to be able to find that creative guru within you, and thank you for allowing me to be the spark. I absolutely relish in that. I look forward to definitely bringing you some new ideas and hopefully something with different perspective in 2018. So I will think about how I'm going to do that. But in the meantime, remember that you are incredibly special. I can't begin to tell you how much I believe in that, and that I know that there is an art guru inside of every single person. It's a matter of letting go of the fears, finding our creative confidence, and then sharing that process with the world. I thank you. I love you all. Stay wonderful, healthy, and safe. And until next year, when these live streams will resume, I love you all, and keep creating, because a creative mind is a brilliant mind. And remember, a rolling stone gathers no moss. So never stop creating. Bye guys.